For MTBPS will be available on 30th October 2024 at www.treasury.gov.za. Your Parliament, your voice, your future.
Let's engage again to buy them the machine to do recycling. I then said, let us get a recycling facility. We said, let's get a recycling facility that was assisted by the late Minister Molewa in Newcastle. We then said, come and mentor these people. They are new. So the private sector comes in that way. You've got these private guys who are in recycling, they are coming with skills. You've got NECAN coming in with equipment. Then it becomes an effective partnership for the exit. I think, Honorable Gama, we take the point on the work on infrastructure. But I must say, through Infrastructure South Africa, issues of EIAs and all requirements of that nature are now getting resolved easy. Foreigners, Honorable Maslango, are not mostly in this program because the employment is localized. So you will not have a threat of foreigners. The threat that you really have, it's ghost employees. That's a real thing that affects this program, ghost employees, because people, whether they are councillors or whoever, will just collect IDs and then want to claim money out of that. Whether you talk of environment or where, the problem is ghost employees, which is literally corruption and need to be dealt with. And I think the minister referred to that earlier. But I must concur, Chair, we are also here not because we are perfect. We are here also to take from ideas in the collective, and we are prepared to take that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honourable members, for the inputs, and indeed I echo the Deputy Minister's words that we're here to learn and to collaborate. I do want to sound one warning, if I can, Chair, and to the committee. And what the DDG earlier said should be listened to very carefully. If there was a move or a discussion that is taking place currently, or a thought that is being floated, that EPWP should be moved into the presidency under the Presidential Employment Stimulus Program, that would spell disaster for millions of unemployed, unskilled South Africans. It should be resisted at all costs, because we cannot equate people who are doing low-skilled jobs, who have the ability to upskill over time to become teachers' assistants or to become clinic assistants, etc. That would spell disaster. And I think it is something that, regardless of our political affiliations, we should be united in keeping the concept and the proposal and the structure of EPWP and what it represents for millions.
The Adjustments Appropriation Bill, the Rates and Monetary Amounts and Amendment of Revenue Laws Bill, the Taxation Laws Amendment Bill, the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, and the Tax Administration Laws Amendment Bill.
And off the back of the 2023 MTBPS, Minister Godongwana delivered the final budget speech for the sixth administration in February 2024. These priorities were centered around achieving fiscal sustainability and promoting economic growth, and they included the fiscal consolidation through realizing a primary surplus and reducing the budget deficit through expenditure cuts and revenue enhancements. The expenditure reductions by implementing a net reduction of 80.6 billion in non-interest expenditure over the medium term. The revenue enhancement by revising revenue by an undisclosed amount. Economic growth by boosting economic growth through infrastructure development, investment, and job creation. Social welfare by protecting vulnerable populations through social programs and poverty reduction initiatives. And debt management by managing debt and borrowing to ensure the fiscal sustainability. These priorities aim to strike a balance between fiscal discipline and economic growth while addressing social and economic challenges. Let's take a look at the Minister's opening remarks and the bill that he tabled before the National Assembly in the February 2024 budget speech. Here's what the Minister had to say.
Madam Speaker, according to two prominent economists, Alberto Alsenia and Danny Rodrigues, they had this observation to say, and I quote, "A crude distinction between economics and politics would be that economics is concerned with expanding the pie, while politics is about distributing it." Madam Speaker, is that the size and quality of the national pie is what informs and ultimately determines the realization of the political imperative of redistribution. Our mission over the past 30 years has been to restore both social and economic justice for our nation, and to decisively address the inequality that was the hallmark of the system of discrimination and dispossession. The budgets we've tabled since 1994 have been about securing the goal of growing the economy so that we can do more to address the inequalities and deprivation that still scar our society and undermine the promise of democracy. So it is with a great sense of privilege and purpose that I stand before you to present the last budget of the 6th Democratic Administration. Siyabuya. Madam Speaker, I therefore table the following documents before this House. The 24 Division of Revenue Bill, the 2024 Appropriation Bill, the Estimates of National Expenditure, the 2024 Budget Review, the 2024 Fiscal Framework, the second Adjustment Appropriation Bill, the Budget Speech, the Gold and Foreign Exchange Contingency Reserve Account Deferral Amendment Bill.
Have your say. The Standing Committee on Finance and the Select Committee on Finance invite stakeholders and interested parties to submit written submissions on the 2024 revised fiscal framework and revenue proposals. That will be tabled on 30 October 2024 with the MTBPS. The Minister of Finance will table the 2024 medium-term budget policy statement before Parliament on 30 October 2024 in terms of Section 28 of the Public Finance Management Act 1 of 1999, the PFMA. This requires the Minister to table multi-year projections for revenue, expenditure, and key macroeconomic projections on an annual basis. The Minister will also meet his obligation under Section 6.1 of the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act 9 of 2009. That requires the Minister to submit to Parliament the MTBPS. Public hearings will be conducted virtually on Wednesday, 6 November 2024. Submissions and your indication on whether you want to make an oral presentation must be received by no later than 12 o'clock on Monday, 4 November 2024. Submissions must be directed to the committee secretaries, Mr. Alan Wickham and Ms. Tebucho Sipanya, Standing Committee on Finance, and Mr. Nkululeko Mangweni, Select Committee on Finance, 3rd floor, 90 Plain Street, Cape Town, or email to awickham@parliament.gov.za, tsepanya@parliament.gov.za, and nmangweni@parliament.gov.za. Copies of the 2024 MTBPS will be available on 30th October 2024 at www.treasury.gov.za. Your Parliament, your voice, your future.
You are still tuned in to Parliament TV, and this is the build-up to the medium-term budget policy statement that the Minister of Finance, Mr. Enoch Godongwana, will table before the National Assembly today at 2 p.m. Of course, you can join the conversation on all social media platforms at Parliament of RSA. The Parliamentary Budget Office made presentations before the Standing Committee on Appropriations on the 25th of October 2024. This was a preparatory workshop by the PBO in terms of the medium-term budget policy statement for the committee, covering the policy environment, macroeconomic policy, and the fiscal framework under which the budget will be delivered by the Minister of Finance. Now, we are in studio with the Director of the Parliamentary Budget Office, Dr. Janchis, to discuss the role of the PBO and how members of Parliament have been equipped to better understand the link between the MTBPS and the fulfillment of the committee's budget will be delivered by the Minister of Finance. Now, we are in studio with the Director of the Parliamentary Budget Office, Dr. Janchis, to discuss the role of the PBO and how members of Parliament have been equipped to better understand the link between the MTBPS and the fulfillment of their committee's responsibilities. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you so much, Seppo. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
And viewers as well. Thank you so much.
Dr. Janchis, let's jump right into it. Of course, you held this big workshop for the members. Can you just briefly explain the role of the PBO within Parliament and, of course, the role that it played in terms of this workshop?
Thank you so much. The PBO established by Parliament to really advise Parliament on the key measures to consider when adopting or processing the budgets and other money bills. That in a nutshell. So the workshop was largely what we normally do. We prep members, but largely to give context from which the policy statement we presented to indicate where is the economic situation is globally and domestically, where is the policy implementation space is, but also what is the public finance situation in line with what we presented a week before. So it's a very worthwhile workshop, given that it was the first midterm budget statement for the current administration.
And let's talk about the importance of having this workshop and equipping members with the kind of information that will ensure that they are knowledgeable when going into the sitting today.
It is always important from our perspective, and we've also received feedback from members to say, look, this enables them when they look at the budget today, what areas to focus on, what to look into, particularly when you look at in our first introduction section of our presentation, we raise a very important point sharply around the fact that we currently don't have an adopted midterm development strategy, which normally, once the term starts, government will table a 5-year strategy in terms of what will be done, but we don't have that at this stage. And our concern as a team was to say, then what is the budget based on if you don't have that, So hence, it was very useful to raise such key issues where members can ask the Minister of Finance and government posted the discussions today and tomorrow.
Of course, when I went through the presentation, it explained the link between the MTBPS and the medium-term development plan.
Yep.
Kindly explain to our viewers what the medium-term development plan is and its significance.
Yes. What happens is that we go go to elections. In 29th of May, we went to elections. The government that is formed after, it set out plans for the next 5 years, what they're going to achieve based on manifesto. I think for now we have a different setup, but based on manifesto, these are the priorities for the next 5 years terms. And those priorities are captured within the, it used to be medium-term strategic framework, but the name has changed to medium-term development plan to say this level of service delivery we're going to do for the next 5 years. These are the growth, this is how we're going to create employment, this is what we're going to grow the economy and so on. So those priorities set out from the manifestos are captured within that mid-term development plan. Then the budget is made to fit into that. So we're going to use this budget to realize these priorities based on the elections manifesto or election commitments. So it is important for Parliament oversight in a sense that Parliament is more concerned about the impact of the budget in the society and the economy. And with that plan in place, Parliament is able to use it to hold government accountable. Say, hang on, you said you'll create employment for this much for the next 5 years. How far are you with that? And so on. So we don't have that yet.
Okay.
So it is very interesting to see how the dynamics play out. But I understand, of course, as I said earlier on, there are quite different dynamics that are playing out now, where there's government of national unity, I call it coalition government, where there has to be compromise and so on. But the reality is that it is impacting on the oversight of Parliament at the beginning already. And we hope that it can improve in the next few months before the budget is presented.
So from what I take from now, we can easily say that so far the medium-term development plan for 2024 to 2029 has not been tabled yet.
It's not been tabled yet.
Now, from your view then, especially from an expert view and looking at the past priorities, what do you then think are some of the priorities that Parliament can look at and could be part of the priorities that will be put in the medium-term development plan?
What is very good is that when you remember over the past 2 months, over the above the concerns, the President had made a State of the Nation address, which had outlined 3 priorities, which would be your dealing with growth, inclusive growth, dealing with cost of living and capable state, and dealing with corruption. So these are key priorities which, when you look at the National Development Plan, you still find them captured within that. So what we did over and above raising concerns, we went through back to national development, say even if we don't have a mid-term development plan, you can see that these priorities are still captured within the national development strategy as they are. So that can provide compensating measures for Parliament oversight to say these 3 priorities are still captured within the national development plan, which we are in the last leg of the 2020-30 is the last leg of that plan. So the assumption is that then the budget will largely based around the President's State of the Nation address for 3 priorities, and the budget will be a lot aligned with that. I guess our concern is that we need specific programs that are impacting, that are spelled out in the mid-term development plan. What would lead to employment creation? What would lead to growth of economy? What would lead to dealing with cost of living?
And that's exactly what I was about to ask you, that with what you've just said and what you've just shed light on, then how can Parliament effectively approve the 2024 MTBPS without a finalized national development plan?
Yeah, I mean, well, the budget is regulated by the Money Bills Act. The Minister of Finance has to present the mid-term budget 3 months before the budget. I guess it's a lesson in my view of how you manage this in the future, because clearly our concern is that this kind of approach entrenches the misalignment between the policy and the planning side, because policy and the budget side, because at the same time, now we're having a budget which is not very clearly, obviously aligned to a policy. And we've raised this concern over time, the issue of misalignment between the planning on one side and the budget on the other side. And we're concerned that for Parliament oversight perspective, this would certainly play out into that space of entrenching the misalignment between the budget and the planning side. And hopefully in the budget in a few months' time, we'll have that mid-term development plan in place, which will help us to deal with the concerns that we have at this stage.
And then what are some of the recommendations then from the Parliamentary Budgetary Office to ensure that the gap between planning and budgeting is bridged?
Look, I think what we do raise concerns, but because at the end of the day, it's about dealing with three main concerns: unemployment, inequality, and poverty. So what we have said as part of consideration, we say Parliament then can ask government to say, okay, we see there's no midterm development plan in place, then there's a budget. Now tell us, how will this budget deal with these three challenges in a very simplistic way, so that then next year we can take stock as Parliament. You said we'll reduce unemployment by this much with this budget. How far have you gone with that? So that's going to be more of a part of our strength and oversight to say, let us know the impact of this budget as a Parliament, and then we can take that as a way of oversight, because this is a first policy statement. It's very significant in a way of considering there's a beginning of the term. So it's very significant in driving the narrative in terms of where we want to be as a country for the next 5 years. And that for us is very important, that the policy is very strengthened around that, that the policy objectives is very clearly spelled out around that. And Parliament can still use that compensating measure to say, okay, there's a budget, tell us how will this really deal with these three challenges that we have, unemployment, poverty, and inequality.
And what other processes has the PBO sort of presented to the committees to ensure that they are equipped? I know that you had the workshop. Are there any other initiatives that the PBO has come up with to ensure that members are knowledgeable and equipped?
Look, I think 2 weeks before we had a roundtable discussion about multidimensional poverty indices, which also was really to build up towards this scenario where we outlined different mechanisms that Parliament could use as a foresight in really determining whether the budget proposals would lead to improvement in the socio-economic indicators. And in our view, that is the one tool that's still open for Parliament. We're still strengthening the offering for us as PBO, but I still feel that can be a very useful tool, because it can also go regionally as well. We can go to provinces and even decompose it further to localized district, where we can see this is where the situation of poverty in multidimensional facet is, and how can the budget be used to deal with some of the deprivation. So that's a one tool that's available. But also what we've shown in the workshop, we did outline how has public finance performed over time, how has been the policy, because remember in February we had a budget proposed, and we looked at that to say how far has that been implemented, and has it led to improvement some of the service delivery mechanisms. So we outlined that as well as one measure that Parliament can take into the space in the next term. So I think there's different things, but also there has to be recognition that as a first policy statement, which in a way I sense that everybody started trying to get around, but I think in our view, oversight model has to not be left behind. It has to be part of the process over time. Otherwise, we'll miss it at the beginning and not realize the priorities that we want to have.
And then lastly, as a South African civilian, what are your expectations from the budget speech today?
Look, I think when you look at the President's priorities, there's clearly a sense of saying there has to be some way of enabling municipalities to deliver services, and infrastructure at that level also is very, both social and economic infrastructure. But we still feel, in our view, that as much as government has been driving growth through the structural reform, there has to be a lot of recognition that more spending protecting social services still has to be in place, and also ensuring that infrastructure spending takes place. Also, when you look at, for the past 6 months, many of the economic sectors have not done well. Have underperformed. Look at agriculture, manufacturing, construction have not done well. So we need more of government spending to crowd in private sector to participate in this regard. And the issue around tech space, for me it's an interesting one. In our presentation we did raise that there could be opportunity for expanding the tax base. We feel that there's a room for getting, particularly when you look at wealth tax, there has to be a space where we identify wealth, because people who are wealthy are not always captured in the tax system because they don't earn salary, so they have assets. So we need to think about criteria around that. And secondly, the issue of dealing with abuse of tax system. Internationally there's been a lot of discussion, and that can really lead to more tax base being created for more revenue to be generated. And we hope that could be some of the consideration in the next few hours, if not minutes.
Thank you for always making the time.
Thank you so much.
That was Dr. Janjis, the Director of the Parliamentary Budget Office, talking to us about the objectives of the workshop that was held for the Standing Committee on Appropriations in preparation for the MTBPS and the recommendations of the PBO in terms of what the Minister is going to say later on today at 2 p.m. Stay tuned for more.
We have embarked on a broad structural reform agenda that aims to address the challenges that held back our growth. This agenda included areas like electricity, logistics, water, telecommunication, and visa reforms. The budget review details the good progress that has been made in these areas over the past few years, but obstacles remain. And let me focus on the two largest of these. Load shedding is a problem that confronts all South Africans. It disrupts production, operations, livelihoods. Reforming the sector will result in long-term energy security. We took the necessary decision in the past 5 years, and these are beginning to are bearing fruit. To promote further investment in renewables, this budget proposes an increase in the limit for renewable energy projects that can qualify for carbon offset regime from 50 megawatts to 30 megawatts. Eskom continues to be a key role player in the electricity sector, and the debt relief plan allows the entity to focus on its core business. We will release the report on the independent review of Eskom's coal-fired power stations in the coming week. The review was done to inform part of the conditions attached to the debt relief plan. The recommendations will fit into Eskom's corporate plans to bolster accountability and oversight. It is true the combination of private investment in new energy projects, rooftop solar installations, and improvements in Eskom generation fleet that load shedding will reduce, and reliability and security of supply improve. In addition, to support these efforts, we are introducing a new 2 billion conditional grant over the medium term to fund the rollout of smart prepaid meters. This will begin with the municipalities that have been approved for debt relief. To address South Africa's increasingly unreliable logistics system, Cabinet approved the Freight Logistic Roadmap in December 2023. The roadmap outlines immediate steps needed to improve port equipment, locomotive availability, and network security. It also sets out a clear path for enhancing efficiencies, facilitating the introduction of competition, and leveraging financial and technical support of the private sector. In this regard, third-party access to the freight rail network will be introduced by May 2024. In ports, private partner has been secured to upgrade Pier 2 of the Durban Container Terminal. This should increase private investment in equipment, enhance technological capability, and improve operational efficiencies. Government has provided Transnet with a 47 billion guarantee facility to support the entity's recovery plan and meet its immediate debt obligation. Like ESCOM, the guarantees come with conditions. These conditions require Transnet to focus on its core activities and for the entity to introduce private sector partnerships. This will improve Transnet's sustainability and support the implementation of the roadmap.
My name is Joe Maswangai. I'm the chairperson of the Standing Committee, Finance, National Assembly. The responsibility of the committee is a mini responsibility of Parliament, which is to process legislations that are finance related, is to play oversight on the Department of Finance, all entities that have to do with finance, and play oversight on the financial sector as a whole in South Africa. Banks, insurance, and other related companies which are in that space. So we don't only play oversight only on government institutions. We are a Parliament of the Republic of South Africa. So we've got the responsibility on everybody. And in our case, we've got the responsibility on all the banks. Hence, there was an issue about the VBS, Itala. They are not government banks, but we have the responsibility to make sure that banks operate in a manner that surely the depositors or the investors feel safe that their money is in safe hands. Yes, we live now in the era of information superhighway. You can't run away from that. Hence, even some of our public hearings, we do them virtually. And it makes life easier for the public, because instead of coming to Cape Town, which is very, air ticket is very expensive. And you have to get accommodation. Accommodation in Cape Town is very expensive. So we'll prefer to either to do a hybrid or a full virtual to make sure that there's maximum participation of people. What people have to do is to buy data. Not that data is cheaper. Data in South Africa is expensive. But compared to traveling to Cape Town, it's much cheaper. So we engage, including the entities and treasury.
Yes.
Most of the time we have virtual meetings. We don't always have meetings in Cape Town. Most of our meetings are conducted in the virtual space, team, and all those platforms which are there.
Welcome back. And earlier you would have heard Minister Godongwana during the budget speech in February indicating allocations to the education sector as well as the health sector. You are still watching Parliament TV, and this is a build-up to the medium-term budget policy statement that the Minister of Finance, Mr. Godongwana, will table before the National Assembly today at 2 p.m. And I'm now joined by the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance, Dr. Joseph Maswanganyi. Thank you very much, Doc, and welcome to Parliament TV.
You are welcome.
Doc, if we can just begin this conversation by you outlining the mandate of the Standing Committee of Finance, and I want you to do that in a layman's language so that our viewers get to understand what is the role of the Standing Committee on Finance.
The Standing Committee on Finance is a subcommittee of Parliament. It accomplishes the actual role of Parliament. Which is the actual role of Parliament? Parliament is a legislative body because there are three arms of government. It's Parliament, legislative, it's judiciary, interpret the laws of the Republic, and the executive, that's cabinet, implement policies and legislations. So when we're here in Parliament, our core mandate is to make laws. However, beyond that, Parliament has got a responsibility to play oversight. It has got an oversight role in Parliament. Our core mandate is to make laws. However, beyond that, Parliament has got a responsibility to play oversight. It has got an oversight role that it plays on the executive, government entities, and over the affairs of the Republic as a whole, because this is not a parliament for government. This is a parliament of the Republic of South Africa. We have got the responsibility to play oversight on almost every Republic, hence there are different portfolio committees. So ours as a finance committee, we are responsible for legislations in the finance space. We also play oversight role in the finance space over National Treasury, SARS, Reserve Bank, banks in general, and other financial institutions. So within the overall responsibility of Parliament, we have our role as a committee to make laws, to play oversight.
I'm happy that you gave that brief background. Now I want you to align this mandate of the Standing Committee into the current process, which is the medium-term budget policy statement. What role does your committee play in this budget policy statement?
The role of the committee in this regard, after the minister will have tabled the MTBPS today, this afternoon, the following day, in terms of the money bills and the procedure set by Parliament, the minister will appear before the Standing Committee on Finance and the Standing Committee on Appropriation. It becomes a joint committee to come and explain to the committees in detail what the MTBPS is all about. Because today he was going to read the speech, but the details are in those books that is going to table this afternoon. The tax laws and other laws is going to table more than 5 or 7 laws, bills this afternoon. So after the PBO and the FFC come and brief the committee, and from there we will call the public into what we call a public hearing to make submission that public, the minister has tabled the MTBPS. What is your feeling on these taxations categories that the minister has introduced or is amending? Then from there, we are going to compile a report to the National Assembly, which will be tabled, what we call is a fiscal framework report about the finances, about the macro and the microeconomic policies, and table it in Parliament. Once the Standing Committee Finance is done with the fiscal framework, then the process moves to Appropriations Committee. Appropriations Committee deals specifically with the budget. Is appropriating, is allocating money to departments, to government entities, and make sure that the money is spent properly. the two spheres of government. So the bill is called the Division of Revenue. That is Appropriations Committee.
I think that takes me to the next question in relation to this role of the committee, because I want to know then, how does your committee then assess the allocation of various resources, especially in terms of job creation, education, healthcare, and infrastructure?
You will remember that the President opened this Parliament in June. And in opening the Parliament, the President announced quite a number of interventions. Amongst those is to make sure that South Africa becomes what he calls a construction site. What it means is that government is going to roll out infrastructure programs throughout the country to make sure that it ignites economic growth. And infrastructure rollout is labor intensive. It means it will create more jobs for young people. So we'll make sure that we ask the Minister, the President said that is going to roll out infrastructure project. Where are they in the MTBPS? National Executive Committee has raised this issue that it must be looked at to make sure that government expand what we call zero rate kind of pricing or VAT into some of the foodstuffs. Because if, for instance, you have got a high VAT rate on a milk for children, what's going to happen? You want children to be suffer from malnutrition, eggs. There are basic foodstuffs which are not supposed to be highly taxed, because there will be hunger in this country. So we are going to ask the Minister, which is the food basket, or what is in the basket in terms of food items that will be zero rated. He say, here they are. And we say as public representatives that this is not enough. You might find the potatoes are not there. We look at the basics, not luxury food like ice cream and other stuff. Basics which are important for nutrition. So those are some of the things. So we dissect the budget, because we get the mandate from the public. When we go out to the constituency week next week, we'll be going out to get mandate from the people. And when we come back, we'll go deeper into detail to dissect or analyze the budget.
You've spoken a lot about the commitments made by the President and around turning the country into construction site, and we all know that there's always monies involved when there's, if you are to turn the country into a construction site, there's definitely going to be a lot of money involved. Now, in terms of financial discipline, how will your committee then ensure that the departments where the money gets allocated, they strike the balance between the fiscal discipline and the economic growth?
This budget has got a major challenge which has to be attended to. Is the problem of the debt service cost. Government of South Africa is owing a lot of money to the lenders, that is to the financial institutions. So the Cabinet of South Africa must attend to this matter, because at the end, South Africa, if we are not careful, we are going to spend $1 billion a day servicing the debt. That's the money that is going to the banks, and that is going to rob communities of services. So we are saying that as much as you'll be spending money on servicing the debt, which you have got obligation, but that in itself must not affect social expenditure. We are beginning to hear that there are challenges of payment for teachers, challenges of continuing with EPWP and other imported programs. That will be disastrous. If we wake up tomorrow, there's no longer EPWP, because it has generated employment for many people. So as much as government has got challenges which we acknowledge,
but there are certain programs in the budget that must be protected. School nutrition, it can't be compromised, for instance, and many, many other programs which are critical. But the issue of attending to the debt crisis, the cabinet must create space and find a way of coming back to Parliament and say, this is the strategy to deal with the debt.
Thank you. And you've mentioned that there's monies. I keep going back. There's lots of monies involved. I'm glad to hear you've been concerned about the debt that our government has made. But now I want to know from the committee side, looking at all these challenges that you've highlighted, how then will your committee be dealing with financial mismanagement and corruption?
From time to time, we invite the Department of Finance, National Treasury, when we pick up an issue. Like now, we have got a matter that we are dealing with them, the Integrated Financial Management System. That Auditor General, because in terms of playing oversight, institutions that support democracy assist us because they have got technical capability. The Auditor General has picked up shortcomings in terms of the procurement of the IFMS. And we're raising it with the Treasury, that there is this issue. We went to CETA offices in Centurion. There's issues there. That's one. The entities that report to National Treasury, we had an issue last time with the Land Bank. We had to go to Pretoria, sit down with them. Why is Land Bank not performing at the level at which they are supposed to perform? They raised quite a number of issues. This year they came back and reported that things are beginning to be positive. So we play a very, very critical role to make sure wherever there is underspending and a whole range of issues raised by Auditor General and other institutions supporting democracy, we summon that entity or the department to come and account, because this public money is not money for the minister or for us as members of Parliament. No, it's a money for South Africans, and every cent must be accounted for.
I'm glad to hear that when these issues are brought to your attention, you often invite the departments to come and account. But where does it end? Because you'd have an issue raised, the department would come and brief you. Is there consequence management in relation to the issues that are raised by the Auditor General in relation to the work of the departments?
There has to be a consequence management. If ever somebody has to face the full might of the law, that has to be done. If ever money have to be recovered, that has to be done. So it is clear in terms of the law what are the steps that must be taken wherever there is a problem of money that cannot be accounted for, or officials who do as they wish. If ever they have to go through the DC, that has to be done. And the outcome is something that they have to face themselves. They have to make a case before the DC why they think they are innocent.
You earlier mentioned a number of finance committees that are involved or you work with in terms of this medium-term budget policy statement. But Parliament has a number of committees, so I want to understand how does your committee engage with other portfolio committees of Parliament in relation to the MTBPS?
As I've said before, today, the day when the minister tables the budget, first thing in the morning from 11 until 2:30, we come together as the 4 committees. 2 committees from NA, that is SCOF, Standing Committee Finance, and Committee Appropriations. Select Committee Finance, Select Committee Appropriations from the NCOP. So we conduct business together today. Even the following day when the minister comes to brief Parliament, he will be briefing these 4 committees. So from the beginning, we process the MTBPS and the budget together. But we reach a stage where we allow the committees to go separate when we have to adopt the fiscal framework report. We don't want to muddy the process and have a joint kind of adoption. That is not allowed. So first, it will be the committee from NA adopting the budget, because we first process the report in the NA, then the process is referred to the NCOP. So there's somewhere where at the beginning we work jointly, but we reach a stage where we go separate ways because the two houses have got different mandates.
Your office informed me this morning when we were looking for you that you would be attending a lock-up session.
Yeah.
We don't know what happens there as ordinary people, so we're not going to ask you what happens there in the lock-up session, but we would ask you what are your expectations from the minister's speech this afternoon.
No, in the lock-up session, as a committee, we are not in a circumcision school where I can't tell you what happens. It's a parliamentary process. We get into the boardroom, Treasury delivers all the documents, including the speech of the minister. Once we are there, we don't allow people to get out of the parliamentary precinct or leak the information. That is illegal. And it's not allowed for a member to behave in that manner, because we have taken an oath that will make sure that the information that is kept confidential must not be information that is illegal. It's not allowed for a member to behave in that manner, because we have taken an oath that will make sure that the information that is kept confidential must not be leaked. From there, we go to the assembly. We expect the minister to look at issues like fuel. Once the price of petrol goes up, it triggers everything, because transport is the artery of our system. We hope it will be arrested, and it's going to dampen the spirit of the Reserve Bank, which has begun to deal with inflation and begin to cut the repo rate. And people from September were having cash, at least in their pocket. But now, if the price goes up, I don't know what is the explanation. I'm against that as a citizen, because we know price of petrol triggers everything. Can those who have got control over it look at it favorably? Because it's causing a problem to the cost of living. We are talking about the cost of living, which is very high. Say, for instance, somebody is a teacher, administrator, the money they earn, because their children cannot qualify for NSFAS. So, for instance, you earn 400,000, and the limit for you to get the NSFAS is when you earn 350. But because of a markup of 50,000, your child does not qualify to get NSFAS. Can you, as somebody who earns 400,000, afford to take a child to VETS or UCT or any university? Not. At the end, you go to Machonisa or go to the bank, get a loan, but you have got a loan of a car here, you have got a bond here. At the end, such people who are called the missing middle, they are left with nothing. They are highly indebted. We have to feel for them. We must be responsible leaders. We can't do things as we wish, which have got a serious impact on the lives of the people that we are leading.
Mr. Masonga, thank you very much. I understand you're having quite a hectic day today. I'd like to thank you for affording us this time to have this conversation. It was indeed a fruitful conversation, and I'm sure our viewers at home have learned so much from this conversation. I'd like to thank you very much. And I know that all our eyes will be on the lookout to hear on the issue of the basket, on what items are going to be included or excluded from that basket. I would really like to thank you so much for taking this interview.
You are welcome.
Viewers, that was Dr. Joseph Maswanganyi, the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance, providing valuable insights into the committee's role, the priorities and concerns regarding the medium-term budget policy statement and related matters. Please stay tuned.
On Wednesday, the 30th of October 2024, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Enoch Godongwana, will deliver the medium-term budget policy statement to the National Assembly. The medium-term budget policy statement is a critical element in the overall budget process as it sets out the policy framework for the budget presented every February. It also provides the country and its elected representatives with an update on the National Treasury's economic forecasts, adjusts the budgets of government departments, and makes emergency changes to spending. The MTBPS allows Parliament and the public to interact with the government's budget through committee oversight over government departments when committees review the effective and efficient use of available resources. The process is the Budget Review and Recommendations reports, which must be tabled in the National Assembly before the MTBPS reports are adopted. The MTBPS makes it possible for Parliament and the public to interact with government's budget plans several months ahead of the budget itself in February of the next year. Watch the medium-term budget policy statement live across Parliament's platforms on Wednesday, 30 October at 2 p.m. Join the conversation on social media using hashtag MTBPS2024. For more information, visit our website at www.parliament.gov.za. Your Parliament, your voice, your future.
You are still tuned into Parliament TV, live here from Cape Town at the Parliamentary Studios. Of course, we're building up to the MTBPS that the Minister is scheduled to deliver to the National Assembly sitting, a physical sitting in this sense, at 2 p.m. Of course, you can join the conversation on all our social media platforms at Parliament of RSA and watch the delivery of the speech here on Channel 408 or even on all our social media platforms. Of course, during his budget speech in February 2024, the Minister Enoch Godongwana tabled the key priorities, which include focus on supporting economic growth, infrastructure development, and fiscal sustainability. To boost economic growth, the Minister indicated that the government had plans to address structural constraints, particularly in electricity and logistics. Load shedding had been a significant challenge, and reforms in the electricity sector aimed to promote energy security and reliability. The February 2024 budget proposed increasing the limit for renewable energy projects that qualify for the carbon offsets regime. Now, for infrastructure development, the Minister reiterated government's focus on infrastructure financing and delivery reforms. He indicated that government aims to optimize the infrastructure value chain, attract private sector participation, and introduce new financing instruments like infrastructure bonds and concessional loans.
And in terms of fiscal sustainability, the Minister highlighted the importance of focusing on the reduction of the budget deficit and stabilizing debt. He indicated that government plans to achieve this through expenditure reductions, revenue enhancements, and reforms to the gold and foreign exchange contingency reserve account. In addition to the three key priorities that the budget speech delivered in February this year focused on, the Minister highlighted the climate finance, electric vehicles, procurement transformation, and tax proposals. Let's take a closer look at what the Minister had to say about the fiscal outlook and strategy.
Our fiscal strategy to support economic growth, reduce risks to the economy while ensuring fiscal sustainability. Compared to a year ago, the budget deficit for 2023-24 is estimated to worsen from 4% to 4.9% of GDP. The higher budget deficit means that debt service costs in 2023-24 have been revised higher by 15.7 billion to 356 billion. Debt service costs will absorb more than 20% of revenue. To put this into perspective, spending on debt service costs is greater than the respective budgets of social protection, health, or peace and security. For this reason, honourable members, we are strengthening our strategy and sticking to our fiscal goals. A net reduction of 80.6 billion in non-interest expenditure is being implemented over the medium term. At the same time, revenue has been revised up by 45.6 billion over the medium term relative to the medium-term budget policy statement. And we have taken the decision to introduce a reform of the gold and foreign exchange contingency reserve account, also known as GFECRA. Taken together, even with the spending increases I will announce later, the national government gross borrowing requirement will decline from 457.7 billion in 2024 to 428.5 billion in 26-27. The deficit will begin to improve from 24-24 to an estimated 4.5% of GDP, reaching 3.3% by 26-27. Debt will now peak at 75.3% of GDP in 25-26. All of this puts us in a position to continue to protect core services. It allows 60% of non-interest spending to be directed to the social wage. It allows us to preserve capital spending. Compared to the medium-term budget policy statement, we are adding 57.6 billion to pay for the salaries of teachers, nurses, doctors, among many other critical services. Madam Speaker, as I mentioned earlier, in this budget, we are announcing a reform of the GFECRA. GFECRA is an account held at the Reserve Bank that captures gains and losses on the country's foreign currency reserve transactions. Simply put, if the rand strengthens against the US dollar and other reserve currencies, the account balance declines, and vice versa. The account balance has grown to over 500 billion over the years because the rand has depreciated over time. A new settlement arrangement is being introduced that will reduce government borrowing and improve the Reserve Bank's equity position. Ultimately, we are bringing South Africa closer to our peers and ensuring alignment to international best practices. We will draw down 150 billion rand of the GFECRA balance once we have ensured that the sufficient buffers are available to absorb exchange rate swings and the solvency of the Reserve Bank is not compromised.
Welcome back. You're still tuned into Parliament TV on DSTV channel 408. This is a live build-up to the medium-term budget policy statement that is expected, that the Minister of Finance is expected to deliver to the National Assembly at 2 o'clock today. And Seppo, you mentioned earlier that this budget speech will be delivered in Nieve Marquis. Yes. And I think you did explain that the Nieve Marquis now serves at the National Assembly. Yes. After we've been through so many places, from the City Hall to the Cape Town International Convention Center, now there's a Marquis that is there following, of course, those fires in 2 June 2023. So that was the Minister of Finance, the person that we're waiting to hear from this afternoon at 2 o'clock, delivering his budget speech. That was February of this year, and highlighting some key important issues there.
And I think, Teminkosi, viewers will appreciate that, just to summarize the budget speech, they always just focused on economic growth, job creation, infrastructure development, ensuring that we eradicate poverty. And these are socioeconomic issues that we face and challenges that we face on a daily basis. So it's always very comforting to hear that, for example, with your your interview with Dr. Joe, that you have committees that are on board with regards to what is happening on the ground and holding the executive to account and ensuring that the money that is allocated is being used for what these departments have to use it for. Of course, what is important is service delivery to the people. What is important is ensuring that there is more with regards to what is happening on the ground and holding the executive to account and ensuring that the money that is allocated is being used for that delivers his speech.
And this program that you've just outlined are some of the programs that the President spoke strongly on when he addressed Parliament during the opening address in July. So we wait to hear. Like you mentioned, you've also just mentioned quite a few that they've always speak to, which includes, amongst others, debt management. Yes. I spoke earlier to Dr. Masongane, and he was very concerned that the country needs to service its debt, you know, and we need to manage the debt and also borrowing. We need to do something with our borrowing. We cannot be borrowing to ensure financial sustainability, because the moment you borrow, that leaves you with a debt, and you still need to service that debt. How then are we going to move forward as a country if that debt is serviced? So I spoke to him about some of the discussions that take place in the lock-up session. He didn't dwell much, although he just explained what happens in there, where all these documents that the minister will be tabling this afternoon are opened up to some members of the Parliament, including even the speech that the minister will be delivering today. But he spoke strongly on servicing of debt. We need to start servicing our debt in order to have a financial sustainable economy. Otherwise, we're going to keep on borrowing and paying back, borrowing and paying back. So
that's some of the things that we can expect.
Yeah, those are some of the things that we want to hear from the minister on how we're going to deal with that debt management, etc.
Of course, you are still watching Parliament TV on DSTV channel 408, and you can follow us on all social media platforms at Parliament of RSA, and you can watch the minister later on at 2 p.m. as he delivers the budget speech to a physical sitting of the National Assembly at the New Minister Marquee this afternoon. Stay tuned. There's more.
Madam Speaker, at the time of the 2023 medium-term budget policy statement, when revenue collection had performed much worse than anticipated, departments had to reprioritize spending and absorb the wage increases within their baseline. These measures were taken to protect our fiscal integrity. Equally, critical programs had to be protected. This is a practical expression of fiscal consolidation that supports delivery of core services and the social wage. Since then, we have been able to reverse some of the fiscal consolidation announced at the time of the medium-term budget policy statement. In this budget, I'm able to announce that the education sector is allocated an additional 25.7 billion for the carry-through cost of the wage increase over the medium term. At the same time, we are able to protect the budget of critical programs such as school nutrition programs, the program that provides food to pupils in almost 20,000 schools. The Early Childhood Development Grant is allocated a 1.6 billion, raising to 2 billion over the medium term. Health is allocated a total of 854 billion over the medium term. These allocations include 11.6 billion to address the 2023 wage agreement, 27 billion for infrastructure, 1.4 billion for the NHI grant over the same period. The allocation for the NHI is a demonstration of the government's commitment to this policy. There remain a range of system strengthening activities that are key enablers of an improved public healthcare system that must be undertaken. Such activities include building a national health information system and digital patients' records, upgrading health facilities and improving the quality of care to ensure that they meet the minimum criteria to be certified as accredited for contracting under NHI. Strengthening facilities and district management in preparation for contracting. granting semi-autonomous status for central and potential other hospitals, and developing reference prices and provider payment methods for hospitals. Many of these activities are already underway, but require further development before the NHA can be rolled out at scale.
Have your say. The Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act 9 of 2009 that requires the minister to submit Standing Committee on Finance and Mr. Nkululeko Mangweni, Select Committee on Finance, 3rd floor, 90 Plain Street, Cape Town, or email to awicom@parliament.gov.za, tsepanya@parliament.gov.za, and nmangweni@parliament.gov.za. Copies of the 2024 MTBPS will be available on 30th October 2024 at www.treasury.gov.za. Your Parliament, your voice, your future.
You are still watching Parliament TV on DSTV channel 408, and if you've just joined us, welcome. This is our last segment of the build-up to the much-anticipated medium-term budget policy statement that the Minister of Finance, Mr. Enoch Godongwana, will table before a physical sitting of the National Assembly today at 2 p.m. In exercising its responsibilities, Parliament has adopted a collaborative approach to ensure the protection of basic human rights and the advancement of policy implementation and budget expenditure. One of the agencies that Parliament uses is the Financial and Fiscal Commission. And today we are joined by Dr. Patience Mbaba, the chairperson of the Commission, to unpack what the role of the Commission is and obviously this collaborative relationship that it has with Parliament. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tsepo. It's good to be here.
Dr. Mbaba, let's talk more, and I'm sure viewers will appreciate this. What is the FFC and what role does it fulfill?
So the FFC is the Financial and Fiscal Commission. If you go to the Constitution, you will find the FFC there. It is there to support government, to support Parliament, to support all the provincial legislatures. So before the Minister of Finance makes his budget speech in February next year, which we are building up to,
of course,
you know, and 9 months before then, the Commission must make recommendations to the Minister to advise him on the key issues that he must consider when he looks at the budget. So we did make our recommendations in May this year, and one of the key recommendations we made to the Minister was that we need to look at the public sector. We also said that we need to look at the district health system, look at the healthcare environment. We also need to look at the agriculture sector. Because we had various concerns there. But most importantly, we said to the Minister, we need to look at infrastructure. I'm going to unpack some of these recommendations because they've got a bearing on the budget. So the first one, when we said we need to look at the public sector, we said that we need to review the efficiency of the public sector, because we believe that there is so much wastage in the public sector. What do we mean by that? There is so much money that is unaccounted for. There is so much fruitless and wasteful expenditure in the public sector. Money that we can use as a country. We know that we are at a fiscal crunch as a country where we need all the money we can have, all the resources. So if we can save money wherever we can find it in the system, then it's important. So the public service, we need to review and relook at it in terms of its effectiveness. So when we buy this bottle of water that I have in front of me here, the question we must ask, is it value for money if government pays a lot of money for this bottle of water, if someone else can go and buy this bottle of water for lesser amount of money? That is one question. But then it's an example, but it goes through across the whole system. The other recommendation we made to the Minister of Finance is to say, let's look at the smallholder farmers. You know, we have quite a big and progressive agriculture sector, but we have what we call small-scale farmers, the emerging farmers. These farmers still remain on the margins, you know, of the agricultural sector, and there is potential that if they are supported, if they are provided with innovative farming practices, they can actually converge and be part of the large-scale farmers. So we need to bring them up and upskill them and give them resources, because when they are actually productive, it means that the agricultural sector can actually be productive as well. And then the other recommendation we made to the Minister of Finance and to government as well as a whole is that we need to look at infrastructure. I think infrastructure now has become more critical in the sense that rail, port, road transport is critical for economic development. And we have found that in the last few years there has been some inefficiencies there, particularly when it comes to rail. Rail has underperformed. It has not really lived up to the expectations. So one of the key actors in the rail sector is Transnet. And the issue with Transnet is that since post-COVID, it has not performed as well. And during COVID and to up until now, we have experienced a lot of inefficiencies like vandalism, like theft. The locomotives, they break down. And moving goods from Cape Town to Johannesburg to Durban, you use Transnet. Businesses, they do that. So we are quite pleased recently to have learned that the African Development Bank, as well as the BRICS Bank, they have landed 23 billion rand to Transnet to help them in terms of their finances. We are happy with that. It's a progressive step. But what we are saying then is that we need to monitor how that money is spent, because if we do not monitor that and that money is not spent effectively, it means that now government will have to come in and rescue Transnet in the event that they are unable to pay that loan. So it means another bailout. The question now is, do we have capacity for more bailouts?
Of course.
Because you remember that in terms of our debt to GDP, how much money we owe as compared to how much revenue we have as a country, it is very, very high. So the more we borrow, the more we add to that debt burden of the country. So we do not really want to have more debt. So we're saying then that let's rather be more preventative and make sure that Transnet actually, is monitored properly. The other issue that we made recommendations on is obviously on the district health system. We found that there were many inefficiencies there in many of the hospitals in the districts, because we know that government is quite focused on implementing the NHI, and we need to make sure that we have a district health system that is efficient and effective. So there are many recommendations we have made. So we make these recommendations to assist Parliament as well in its oversight role. We see ourselves as an oversight arm as well of Parliament, in the sense that we assist the legislators when they go on oversight visit. We want to give them the information they need, so that they can be able to make those decisions.
Now, Dr. Mbaba, with that said, of course you've touched on a lot of issues and that all South Africans have concerns about. With the issue of lending, and in our previous interviews as well, we spoke about debt management, right? Now, all national government departments are feeling the brunt of budget cuts, right? How does the FFC ensure fiscal sustainability and discipline within these different national departments?
So that's a very important question, because we have what we call fiscal consolidation, and then we also have austerity measures.
Speak to me like I have never done economics.
You've never done economics
Never been in an economics class.
So it's like in your household, when you you are overspending, obviously you're going to make sure that you now tighten the belt. So fiscal consolidation is that. It's just essentially saying that we are tightening the belt as a country. We are not spending money fruitlessly and wastefully. So we are doing the essentials, the important things. So at a provincial level, at a local government level, that is very, very important. The issue here, why did we have to do fiscal consolidation? One of the key areas that has caused a lot of rancor and disagreement is the issue of the rising wage bill in the public sector, because now we are speaking about the departments. The biggest line item, or the biggest expenditure that the departments have, when we allocate money to them, the biggest amount that they use for their expenditure is to pay employees. So yes, they do their service delivery based on the amount we pay, but the largest chunk of it goes to the cost of employment. So we're saying that government then needs to pause and review and relook at exactly where is this money going. The public service over the last few years, post-democracy, has mushroomed, and it's unsustainable. And one of the key problems then is that these decisions about how much, what is the wage bill, how much to allocate, what is the increase is going to be, is made at a national level. National government makes those decisions. And then the municipalities and the provinces, they must implement that. So they have a problem with that, because they said they are not involved in those discussions. So they want to have a say at how much the province will pay towards the cost of employment, towards the wage bill. So that is one of the key issues now going forward that government, through the bargaining council, will have to look at, to say what role do provinces play in negotiating salaries, because these are done at a national level and then are imposed at a provincial level.
And then, Doc, of course, South Africa has a multitude of challenges. We have socio-economic issues, it's poverty, it's unemployment, education, access to quality healthcare. How does the FFC sort of balance the competing priorities, especially in their recommendations with regards to allocating resources?
So the Constitution is very, very clear as to how equitable should the spending of the country be. So there are basic services which we should not compromise on. So as the FFC, when we analyze the budget, we need to make sure that those constitutionally protect should the spending of the country be. So there are basic services which we should not compromise on. So as the FFC, we are not living up to the aims and the goals of the Constitution. So we call those constitutionally protected services. So we want then to make sure that healthcare, everyone has access to healthcare, everyone has access to housing, everyone has access to education. So if there are budget cuts in these basic services, then it's a concern because the Constitution is quite prescriptive in the sense that everyone must have access to these basic rights.
And with that, of course, throughout the past months, we've seen different ministers. You had the Minister of Basic Education, Minister Kwarube, who has been pleading with Parliament, who has been pleading with Treasury to ensure that they get more resources. Because with the budget cuts, she did mention that this means that there won't be enough teachers, right? That we'll see an increase in children in classes. And that is an issue, and it obviously it's a challenge in terms of the quality education that the education system is trying to reach. Now, with that, what are some of the recommendations of the FFC to Treasury and to departments to ensure that with the fiscal consolidation that you mentioned earlier, that it doesn't cut too much to a point where the very right that you want to provide is a challenge to provide?
There's a risk that is involved there in the sense that now if we have this mushrooming debt where we owe a lot of money, when it comes to the priority, so when we get our revenue, the first priority is to pay the debt. Everything else will come last. So it means that now the largest chunk of our budget, or our revenue rather, is going to go to servicing the debt, to paying off our debt. Whereas we should be doing social development and economic development spending in the sense that we should be spending on infrastructure, on education, on health. So therefore it's very important then to have this tightening of the belt to make sure that we have enough money to still pay the what we owe, though it must be getting smaller and smaller what we owe, and then the largest revenue or tax revenue of the country must actually go towards education, towards health, towards housing. So it's a balancing act that we have to do.
And then with that, of course, we're fighting debt, but there's also corruption and there's mismanagement of funds, right? And I mean, it's throughout, it's a web, it's throughout the government departments. How does then the FFC support the address of corruption and financial mismanagement?
We are very strong in the sense that we advocate for fiscal prudence, and we also advocate that government must take action where there is evidence of fruitless and wasteful expenditure or fraudulent activities, because we believe that that money is taxpayers' money and it's not being used, and there's no value for money for it. So we are in support of institutions like the NPA, which go out there and make sure that those who are implicated, they are held accountable. So we do believe that we need to tighten the net and make sure that the taxpayers' money is protected.
And you mentioned that one of the biggest challenges in terms of finances, especially in South Africa, is the debt crisis. What are other big fiscal challenges that South Africa faces at the moment?
Well, because we have rising unemployment, you'll see that in the second quarter of this year, we were told that unemployment is now at 33.5%.
Shocking.
And you'll find that young people are the biggest group which is experiencing unemployment. So what we've found now is that many young people between the ages of 15 and 34, they are actually now migrating towards the SRD grant. And we are saying now we need to really look at this because the risk here is that young people will get, caught up in this web of just being dependent on government. So while we support the SRD grant and we do support the progression of it towards a basic income grant, we are also saying that there has to be conditionalities to the SRD grant. What do we mean by that? What we mean by that is that, yes, we can still have young people who are still recipients of the SRD grants, but government must also work with the private sector. So we call that public-private partnership, in the sense that the private sector will create training programs, will create job creation programs for the young people who are still receiving the SRD grant, but gradually, as they graduate from those programs in the private sector, they will leave the SRD grant. So it's a way of saying that, yes, you can still have the SRD grant and receive it, but there is the condition to it. You must be at school, or you must learn, or you must be in a job creation program, but we need to work with the private sector to create that.
So it seems to me that the FFC supports collaboration in terms of the private sector and the public sector. Tell me, what are some of the recommendations that the FFC has made to ensure that this dependability sort of ends, right? Apart from that, how do we ensure that the very vulnerable people are sought after and that they do not miss the opportunity to be cared for by the national departments and, of course, by government as a whole?
So we advocate for education, for young people to be involved in higher education or in programs where they can learn, because we found that there are many young people who are neither in educational institutions or employment. They are just there. They're just loitering around. And we feel that that is a fiscal risk, because it means that those young people are not actually beneficiaries of the economy. They are outside the economy. They are on the margins of the economy. So we advocate for inclusive economic growth, and we want to draw them nearer. So we would like to see them maybe try getting into small businesses and actually learning skills and running their own businesses as well. So we want an inclusive economy. At the moment, we do feel that the economy has not been including young people because of the skills problem, and also that is also because of the rigidities in the labor market. Because also you have to understand that the labor market, the demand and supply, they are demanding different skills, and the supply of those skills maybe is different. So we need to look at that as well to say, what is the market demanding and what are we supplying? Yes.
And of course, for viewers, where can they get more information about what the FFC is doing, the work of the FFC, and all these recommendations and reports that are provided to national departments, provincial departments, and even local?
Well, we love to engage with the public, and we have a YouTube website where we engage on these issues. We have discussions, we unpack these issues with members of parliament and with other leaders. And we are also available we have a website, ffc.co.za. We are also on Twitter. And we also want to entice and bring into the FFC young people to come in as interns. We want young people who want to understand public finances, how they work. So we are always on the lookout for young people who can join us for 12 months or 24 months to come at the FFC and learn, and then we can, make sure that we are contributing as well.
Thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you so much.
And that was Dr. Mbava, the chairperson of the Financial and Fiscal Commission, providing us with information on what the FFC is, the role of it and its functions, and the importance of ongoing initiatives, development, research, and implementation of policies and tools to advance South Africa's economy and better the lives of South Africans. You're still tuned to Parliament TV. Stay with us.
The budget is one of the most important oversight functions of Parliament. The budget reflects the choices that government has to make, and it is the tool it uses to achieve its economic and development goals. In the budget, government sets out what it's going to spend and the income it collects, which it needs to finance its expenditure. The government has to balance a wide range of legitimate demands with limited resources at its disposal. Budget oversight is intended to help government move forward to realize its goals by increasing government's accountability to its citizens. The budget process occurs over a period of about 18 months. The budget of any financial year undergoes a 4-stage process. The stages are drafting, planning and formulation, the legislative process, implementation, as well as auditing and assessment. Parliament and government departments plan the budget for months in advance for the following year, implementing the current budget while continuously monitoring it for delivery and compliance with policy and evaluating and auditing the previous year's budget. During the legislative phase of the budget, the National Assembly, the National Council of Provinces, and the provincial legislatures debate budget votes with the involvement of interest groups and civil society, the media, and the general public. This is to ensure that they reflect national priorities and accommodate outcomes and actions required by the mid-term strategic framework. It is important to measure the effectiveness of public spending and the manner in which public resources are spent. The more immediate goals are to ensure that government budget priorities are consistent with the declared policy objectives and that the financial resources allocated to priority areas are spent fully and properly. However, a larger purpose of the budget process is to contribute to democracy through ensuring openness, transparency, and accountability for public resources. Parliament, following up on our commitments to the people, making your future work better.
Have your say. The Standing Committee on Finance and the Select Committee on Finance invite stakeholders and interested parties to submit written submissions on the 2024 revised fiscal framework and revenue proposals. That will be tabled on 30 October 2024 with the MTBPS. The Minister of Finance will table the 2024 medium-term budget policy statement before Parliament on 30 October 2024 in terms of Section 28 of the Public Finance Management Act 1 of 1999, the PFMA. This requires the Minister to table multi-year projections for revenue, expenditure, and key macroeconomic projections on an annual basis. The Minister will also meet his obligation under Section 6.1 of the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act 9 of 2009. That requires the Minister to submit to Parliament the MTBPS. Public hearings will be conducted virtually on Wednesday, 6 November 2024. Submissions and your indication on whether you want to make an oral presentation must be received by no later than 12 o'clock on Monday, 4 November 2024. Submissions must be directed to the committee secretaries, Mr. Alan Wickham and Mr. Sipanya, Standing Committee on Finance, and Mr. Nkululeko Mangweni, Select Committee on Finance, 3rd floor, 90 Plain Street, Cape Town. Or email to awicom@parliament.gov.za, tsepanya@parliament.gov.za, and Select Committee on Finance, 3rd floor, 90 Plain Street, Cape Town. Or email to awicom@parliament.gov.za, tsepanya@parliament.gov.za, and nmangweni@parliament.gov.za. Copies of the 2024 MTBP 08 as we build up to the medium-term budget policy statement that is scheduled to be tabled in the National Assembly by the Minister of Finance, Mr. Enoch Godongwana, at 2 p.m. Compared to the 2023 MTBPS, the Minister announced the Treasury added 57.6 billion to pay for the salaries of teachers, nurses, and doctors, among many other critical services in the February budget speech. Despite that, the main issue of concern has been expenditure reduction and budget cuts across all national departments. The Minister of Basic Education, Ms. Siviwe Gwarube, has outlined some of the challenges that budget cuts have induced within her portfolio in a statement that she made on 25 September 2024. And these included the reduction of teaching posts, which may lead to fewer educators in classrooms with the probability of larger class sizes, reduced individual attention for learners, and ultimately a risk to the achievement of quality education outcomes. Reduced textbooks and fewer admin support staff, which could mean that teachers spend more time on admin work, thereby reducing learning and teaching time. Several provinces being forced to preserve the same post basket for the past 3 academic years, despite learner numbers increasing, while other provinces have decreased their posts in the past 3 years. The learner and educator ratios are slowly becoming a crisis in each province and demand urgent attention. The minister further indicated that South Africa needs a robust, dynamic, and growing economy to generate the revenue required to fund public services adequately. She emphasized the importance of adopting and implementing economic policies that prioritize growth.
And of course, just like the basic education department, another department that is faced with challenges induced by the budget cuts is the Department of Health. This is amid the implementation of the National Health Insurance that was signed into law by President Cyril Ramaphosa on 15 May 2024. Now, just like the Department of Basic Education, the Department of Health is at the risk of reducing posts and not being able to fill vacant posts because of the lack of financial capacity. This is but one of the challenges that many departments are forced to navigate their ways through and ensure effective and efficient service delivery to all South Africans. Another department is the Department of Social Development. And of course, on the 2nd of November 2023, the Minister Godongwana announced the extension of the 350 social relief of distress grant, which was previously set to end in March of 2024. The recent extension allows beneficiaries to collect what is now the 370 grant as a result of the increase until March of 2025. This highlights the need for this grant, especially on the back of the unemployment rate and poverty levels in our country. In a State of the Nation address on the 6th, for the 6th administration earlier this year, President Cyril Ramaphosa said government introduced a special grant during the pandemic, which currently reaches some 9 million unemployed people every month. He indicated that they had seen the benefits of the grant and would extend it and improve it as the next step towards income support for the unemployed. The President said, social assistance has shown to increase school enrollment and attendance, lower dropout rates, and improve the pass rate. Following the President's assurance and the Minister of Finance concurrence, the Department of Social Development announced the social grant increases earlier this year in a government gazette dated 28 March 2024. Increases were set to take place twice this year, in April and October. And as of October 2024, the older persons grant has increased from 2,180 to 2,190, with the disability grant increasing from 2,180 to 2,190, just like the previous one. The child support grant increased from 510 Rand to 530 Rand, with no increase in October 2024. And these are some of the increases that the Minister, of course, and the President have seen through the administration of the Social Development Department. Let's take a look at some of those highlights from the Minister's budget speech.
Bringing the total funding to these efforts to 2.3 billion. Government is using 2.9 billion from the criminal asset recovery account to combat illegal mining and other priority crimes, with a 60% allocated, in fact 1.7 billion allocated for the deployment of the police, including vehicle procurement. This budget is also prioritizing infrastructure provision. Government plans to invest more than 943 billion rand in public infrastructures. Spending will support refurbishment and maintenance of existing assets and building of new infrastructure. Madam Speaker, 2.8 trillion, or put it differently, 5.1% of interest expenditure is to provinces and municipalities over the next 3 years. 5.7 billion is allocated to local government and 2.2 trillion. 105 billion is allocated to provinces for the next 3 years to cover the cost of implementing 2023 public service wage agreement, mainly in education and health sector. Provision of these additional funds will cushion the wage bill pressure with a focus on enhancing law enforcement agency. Mamel, housing not going on. If facts is on the table, we're doing the work. We're doing the work. As more, deliver. A total of 765 billion rand is allocated to peace and security cluster. In the coming financial year, 10,000 new police recruits will be trained. And as part of the country's responsibility to promote regional peace and stability, this budget will also allocate funding for the deployment of soldiers in Mozambique and DRC. Work on costing and identifying these needs for these critical missions will continue throughout the year, and funding will be allocated as such. 628 million has been allocated to the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development for the implementation of FATF and State Capture Commission recommendations, bringing the total funding to these efforts to 2.3 billion. Government is using 2.9 billion from the criminal asset recovery account to combat illegal mining and other priority crimes, with a 60% allocated, in fact 1.7 billion allocated for the deployment of the police, including vehicle procurement.
Have your say. The Standing Committee on Finance and the Select Committee on Finance invite stakeholders and interested parties to submit written submissions on the 2024 revised fiscal framework and revenue proposals. That will be tabled on 30 October 2024 with the MTBPS. The Minister of Finance will table the 2024 medium-term budget policy statement before Parliament on 30 October 2024 in terms of Section 28 of the Public Finance Management Act 1 of 1999, the PFMA. This requires the Minister to table multi-year projections for revenue, expenditure, and key macroeconomic projections on an annual basis. The Minister will also meet his obligation under Section 6.1 of the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act 9 of 2009. That requires the Minister to submit to Parliament the MTBPS. Public hearings will be conducted virtually on Wednesday, 6 November 2024. Submissions and your indication on whether you want to make an oral presentation must be received by no later than 12 o'clock on Monday, 4 November 2024. Submissions must be directed to the committee secretaries, Mr. Alan Wickham and Ms. Tebucho Sipanya, Standing Committee on Finance, and Mr. Nkululeko Mangweni, Select Committee on Finance, 3rd floor, 90 Plain Street, Cape Town. Or email to awicom@parliament.gov.za, tsepanya@parliament.gov.za, and nmangweni@parliament.gov.za. Copies of the 2024 MTBPS will be available on 30th October 2024 at www.treasury.gov.za. Your Parliament, your voice, your future. Welcome back. You're still watching the live build-up show to the